The H is a letter that always seems to be there, not wanting to make noise, often going unnoticed. It's the 8th letter of the Spanish alphabet, and interestingly, it's the only one that doesn't have its own sound when we speak. But why is it there if we don't pronounce it? Is its use just a matter of chance? The answer to this and more questions takes us on a journey through time and the evolution of language over the centuries, which you will see next. The H is the only letter in the Spanish language that by itself has no sound. For this reason, it is usually called silent H, and it is only pronounced when it is preceded by the letter C, forming the CH sound, like in the words chocolate or cachivache. It is therefore considered that the origin of the H is etymological and not phonological. To understand why the H is silent, we need to go back thousands of years in time. The Phoenicians were the first to use this letter, which was called heth, and they pronounced it like an aspirated J, something similar to the sound we make when we clean our glasses with a puff of air, H. Then, the Greeks adopted it and softened its sound, and they were the first to start shaping the letter we know today by the name of. After the Greeks, the H reached Latin, where its sound became even softer and it acquired its final form. And it was known as A in archaic Latin and later as Aca in late Latin. And when Latin evolved into Spanish, the H transformed again and took its current name, most likely due to the influence of French, where it is known as ash. At first in Spanish, it was also pronounced with a slight aspiration like the H in English words such as house. But later, many words that began with F in Latin started to transform into words with H in Spanish. For example, farina became harina, facer became hacer, forno became horno, falecho turned into helecho, formoso became hermoso. Or like the word figo, recorded in the Song of Mioshid, written around the year 1200 as the predecessor of the word higo. This happened because in some regions of Spain the F sound was pronounced with an aspiration, which was eventually represented by the letter H. This phenomenon was also reflected in the intermediate H of some words, such as in the case of bujo, which comes from the vulgar Latin bufo. But once the change from F to aspirated H had taken place, how or when was its pronunciation completely eliminated? Until the mid-16th century, according to the Royal Spanish Academy, the H in Spanish was still pronounced with a slight aspiration. But in the 15th century, this aspirated sound began to be considered a sign of vulgarity, something typical of the lower classes or the result of poor education. So, little by little, the aspirated H disappeared and became the silent letter we know today. However, it's interesting that in some dialectal forms of Spanish currently spoken in Andalusia, Extremadura, the Canary Islands, and certain areas of the Americas, the H still keeps its old aspirated sound, although this usage is maintained only by certain minorities. In Andalusia, for example, the most genuinely Andalusian singing is called cante hondo, considered the original manifestation of flamenco in the world of music, and it is characterized by a deep emotional intensity in its performance. Well, this hondo actually comes from the word hondo, but because many Andalusians pronounce that initial H with such a strong aspiration, the word ended up sounding as if it had a J. On the other hand, it's common to find the word halar, a variant of alar, written on the doors of businesses in several Spanish-speaking countries. So much so that the Real Academia Española made it official as a colloquial word. It should also be noted that in certain foreign words, especially those coming from English or German, the sound of the H keeps its aspirated pronunciation, like in the case of hamster holding hashish, hobby, or Hawaiian. Finally, the Royal Spanish Academy has allowed the interchangeable use of the H in a few words, such as harmony, harp, or hurrica. But all these cases are just particularities and are far from being considered a general rule. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when there's a new video. You might think then that if the H isn't pronounced, that there's no point in writing it in words. Or not? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that you're completely wrong, because even though it's not pronounced, it plays a crucial role in Spanish spelling. It helps to differentiate words that sound the same but have different meanings. For example, hola and hola, hecho and echo. Or even to differentiate the preposition a and ha from the verb haber. As you can see, without the H, we could easily get confused when writing and reading. The H also played an important role in the evolution of writing in Spanish. In the past, both the U and the V were written the same way, a trait that had been directly inherited from Latin. To know whether the sound was that of the vowel U or the consonant V, an H was placed before the U. So, for example, in the word huevo, it was clear that it was pronounced huevo and not bebo, or like in the word hueso, so it wouldn't be pronounced beso. For many, the H is a nightmare when it comes to writing. It's common to forget where to put it or even leave it out completely. But never forget that the H has a significant place in the history of the language and in each of the words that contain it. Currently, there are more than 2,000 words in our language that begin with the letter H, even though it isn't pronounced. Words like bone, iron, and hurt, among others. And also, we should keep in mind that this letter can appear in the middle of a word, like in adhesive bay, etc. If you have trouble remembering when to use H, the best thing to do is to read frequently and pay close attention to words you find written with this letter. You should also practice spelling with exercises and dictations in case you feel you have a weakness in this topic, or use mnemonic rules to remember the common words that have H. In conclusion, the H may not have its own sound in Spanish, but its presence in the alphabet is vital. It is a living scar from the process of our language's evolution and helps us maintain clarity in communication. So the next time you come across an H in a word, remember its importance and its history. And that's all for today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to this channel. I also invite you to turn on the notification bell so you get reminded when there's a new video. See you soon.